So we're still in the Gemaras that require a lot of focus. So because of that, before we go weiter, I'd like to just do a small synopsis together with you of what we learned yesterday. The Mishnah, the Mishnah yesterday gave two examples of kulas and tumah tahira, where we allow you to burn tumah with tahira. So the first case of the Mishnah was discussing burning meat that was shlishi latuma together with meat that was rishon latuma, and when you combine them, the meat that shlishi will become a sheni. And the Mishnah says, Rabbi Chanina Sagana Kohanim said that since anyway they're both being destroyed, they're both being burnt, we don't have a problem making the shlishi into a sheni. So that was the basics of what we learned. But there were a lot of details because we ran into a complication that there's a shita that holds that meat cannot make other meat, oichel cannot make other oichel tamei midaraisa. So how anyway would these two meats affect each other? So the Gemara had to offer a couple of different options. Either the Gemara offered up an option that one meat cannot be metama other meat, that would only be by chulin or maybe even by truma. But by kachim midaraisa, one meat could make another meat tamei. That was one option that the Gemara offered to explain why the two meats the rishon meat will make the shlishi meat into a sheni. Midaraisa. The other option that the Gemara offered is that maybe we're only talking midarabanan. Maybe in fact we're discussing a case where the meat will only make a tummy midarabanan. That was also an option that was considered. So that was the two options that I remember that are discussed in the first case of the Mishnah. The second case of the Mishnah was taking oil that became tummy with a tful yoim, which means it's oil of truma, that's shlishi latuma, and you're putting it together with a piece of metal that became an av, and therefore when the truma, that shlishi, touches, you had a piece of metal. You're not putting it directly with a piece of metal. You're putting it with a piece of metal with a piece of meat that touched a piece of metal. So the piece of metal was an av, and the meat that it touched became a rishon. Let me just make sure I'm getting it right and not getting it mixed up. The Gemara said that the Gemara says at the bottom of Yudalad Amud Aleph that we're talking about ner shomatris, right? So then I'm sorry, there's no meat. I got confused. We're talking about oil in and there. So the ner itself is an av. You're taking oil that's a shlishi and putting it into a ner that's an av, and thereby making the shlishi oil of truma into a rishon. So that was even a greater chiddush than the first case. The first case was making a shlishi into a sheni. Now we're making a shlishi into a rishon. And the Mishnah says you're still allowed to do that. That was the second case that the Mishnah discussed. And then Rava introduced another concept that you have to say that tumish mashkin is deraisa. That means a mashka could be mitama something else midaraisa. Okay. So the question that came up as soon as we learned this Mishnah was, what in the world does this have to do with Maseches Pesachim? So at first glance, the link between this shaila of mixing tumas together while you're burning them and Hilchos Pesachim, Maseches Pesachim, is what Reb Meir claims to have figured out from the information discussed earlier in the Mishnah. Reb Meir said, "Midivreim lamadnu," from the discussion earlier about burning different tumas together, I can deduce that when I'm burning my chometz and I have truma that's tamei and truma that's tahar, I could burn them together. And today's discussion is going to be all about that, all about what Reb Meir learned about burning chometz when you're burning truma tahar and truma tamei together, and where he learned it from. So last night, the first option that the Gemara offered us as to how you see from our Mishnah or where Reb Meir got this halacha that you could burn truma tahira with truma tamei together is from Reb Chanina Sagana Kohanim. And the problem that we had was Reb Chanina's Kanak Yehanim was talking about burning meat that's a shlishi with meat that's a rishon. They're both tomei. Reb Meir is taking it a step further, and he's allowing even you to burn truma terhoira with truma tameya. How would you see that from Reb Chanina's Kanak Yehanim? So what the Gemara ended up saying was that the meat that we're talking about, that was a shlishi l'tuma, that Reb Chanina Kanak Yehanim is talking about, wasn't tomei d'oraisa, it was only tomei d'Rabbanan. So therefore, from a d'oraisa perspective, the meat that was a shlishi was really completely tahar, because there's no tomei d'oraisa on it. And you see that Reb Chanina's Kanak Yehanim said testimony that they used to burn meat that from a d'oraisa perspective was completely tahar, together with meat that from a d'oraisa perspective was a rishon, and you're making meat that's completely tar into a sheni, yet you're still allowed to burn them together. So from there, I've made deduced that you can take truma that's completely tar and burn it with truma that's completely tummy. And that's how we left off last night. And the beauty of this pshat is now it makes perfect sense why Reb Chanina's Kanak Yehanim is in the middle of Maseches Pesachim. Because what in the world does this Tumah Tahira Sugi have to do with us? It has to do with us is because through what we know about Tumah and Tahira, that you're allowed to burn meat that midaraisa is tar with meat that's midaraisa tamei, Huadin will apply this to burning chametz, that you're allowed to burn truma that's tar together with truma that's tamei, even though during the burning process, that truma that's tahar is going to become tamei. That's how we ended off last night. So we ended up with my midivrayim, midiver Reb Chanina's Kanak Yehanim. Now, before we go weiter, I just want to bring up a couple of things to think about. There's 3 different periods of time when we could be burning these chametz, the truma tahira and the truma tameya together. There's before there's mana iser, where everything's mutter even to eat, and then there's an argument that I should still be able to burn truma tahira and truma tameya together, because even though right now I could eat the truma tahira, but it's just a matter of time till it's going to have to be destroyed. So since it's going to be destroyed, it's on the path to be destroyed anyway, we'll still allow you to burn the truma tahira with the truma tameya together. Then there's a later situation in the 6th hour, which means from 11 to 12, when it's osir midrabanan, where even the truma tahira, which is chametz, is osir midrabanan. There, thinking about it, it would be even more likely that you should be allowed to burn it with the truma tameya, because it's already osir midrabanan, or similar to a tumah d'Rabbanan. But then there's a further stage. What about after chatzos, where now this truma tahira is already osir midaraisa, b'hana? There, it might even be more lenient to allow you to burn it together with tameya, because as it becomes more and more osir, the svara logic, simple logic, would dictate that it should be more and more likely that you should be able to burn it with truma tameya. And the Gemara today is going to discuss burning truma tahira together with truma tameya in these 3 time zones, and how the time zones impact the heter or iser to burn these 2 things together. So let's see what the Gemara says. Umay midivrei Reb Chanina's Kanak Yehanim. So if you're bringing the raya from Reb Chanina's Kanak Yehanim, so let's just get clear what the raya is. The raya is from meat that's only tamei midrabanan. You're allowed to burn it with meat that's tamei midaraisa. So this shlishi l'tomah d'Rabbanan is going to end up becoming a sheni midaraisa. If you think about it, that's most similar to the case of burning the truma tahira and truma tameya together in the 6th hour, where the truma tahira is already asur b'hana mid'Rabbanan. It would be most similar to that case. Amar Shlokish Mishum Bar Kapara. No, I don't want to learn about these d'Rabbanans. I want to stick to our original pshat, that the case of Reb Chanina's Kanak Yehanim was all tumas of d'oraisa. Masnisen ba'ava tumah d'oraisa, uvlada tumah mid'oraisa. And if that's the case, you can't bring a raya from Reb Chanina's Kanak Yehanim to the case of burning truma, tahira, and tameya together for chametz, because of the Gemara's kasha earlier. There, it's tamei and tamei. By Reb Chanina's Kanak Yehanim, you have shlishi l'tumah, you're burning it together with rishon l'tumah, and it's becoming a sheni l'tumah. But it was always tamei. That's why it's allowed. But Truma Tahira, that we don't see any raya. We don't see any raya that you could burn something that's completely tar with something that's completely tummy. So therefore, Rish Lakish has a completely different approach as to where Reb Meir learned this halacha from, that you're allowed to burn Truma Tahira together with Truma Tamea. Umaymi Divrayim, when Reb Meir said, from the words of the Chachamim, we know that you're allowed to burn Truma Tahira together with Truma Tamea, it's Midivrei Rebbe Lezer Rebbe Yeshua that has nothing to do with our Mishnah at all. Nothing whatsoever to do with our Mishnah. Reb Meir was saying, from the words of the Chachamim, and he wasn't referring to what the Mishnah was quoting right there. In generally, from the words of the Chachamim, other Chachamim in another place, I was able to prove that you're allowed to burn Truma Tahira together with Truma Tamea. Now, the moment we take this path, we have to ask ourselves, if that's the case, so why did the Mishnah start off with Reb Chanin's Kana Kehanim, now that the only relevance to our Masechta is because it's a question of burning Truma Tamea together with Truma Tahira, and we're not bringing any raya from Reb Chanin's Kana Kehanim to that halacha, so why b'chalal is that in the Mishnah? It's not relevant to our Masechta. It's just making us have a hard week trying to wrap our heads around Truma Tahira, but it's not really directly relevant to our question. So Rashi answers that kasha, and Rashi just says, "The ID the boy li'eruye sesarfen kodesh tar imatame." Since we're talking about burning tum and tar together, nokatla. That's why it brought it down. So it's still somewhat relevant, but not directly coupled. Okay, so let's see what the Gemara says.
It would make more sense to start off with burning the chametz, the truma, tahira, and tamei, and then bring in skan kahanim. It's a little
and chanami. So my Rabbi Reb Mendel used to always tell me, why is it that every time the Gemara, every time we have anything that's even remotely related or not even related to politics, I always throw in politics. What happens, right? So why is it every time the Gemara runs, the Mishnah, the Gemara runs into anything remotely related to Tahira, Tumah Tahira, it goes off on a tangent and starts discussing it. So Reb Mendel told us, Reb Mendel Kaplan told us that the reason is there's actually no Gemara. There's no Gemara on Tahiris. Why is there no Gemara on Tahiris? Because the Tanoim didn't know that there was going to be a Meir Shapiro. So from their perspective, nobody would have ever learned it. Nobody would have ever learned Tahiris. It was too difficult. So because of that, they figured we won't make the Gemara Tahiris, but we'll take all the Gemaras that we wanted to, and we'll slide it into different mistechos wherever we can get it slid in. And that's the reason why whenever the Gemara runs into Tahiris, the Gemara goes to town on it, because really this is the way of Chazal spoon feeding us, a spoonful of sugar mixed in medicine go down, spoon feeding us to get us to absorb some Tahiris.
Did you say a hard week? Is there another 7 blot of this?
Not 7, but I didn't get. I'm not out. I didn't get to the other end yet. So I'm still in. It's still a couple of days for sure. I can tell you a couple of days out.
Spoiler alert! The article says 7 days, 7 blot.
7 days. Okay. So we're gonna have the 7 days of Tumah Tahira, and then we're gonna have the 8 days of Chanukah.
Well, I hope the 7 days of Chanukah swallow up the 7 days of
V'layada kibo el kerbena. Okay, gewaltig. Zok the hele Gemara weiter. So let's see what the Gemara says. So we want to now find a new source for the halacha that you could burn Truma Tahira together with Truma Tamea. So Umaymi Devrei Midivrei Rebbe Lezer Rebbe Yeshua. From a Machlokes Rebbe Lezer Rebbe Yeshua that's not even mentioned in our Mishnah. Hi, Rabbi Yeshua. So isn't it interesting? Right away, the Gemara says, from the words of Rabbi Lezer and Rabbi Yeshua, and the Gemara totally ignores Rabbi Lezer. Hi, Rabbi Yeshua. Which Rabbi Yeshua? And we're going to see, in fact, that the raya is going to be only from Rabbi Yeshua, not from Rabbi Eliezer. And Rashi tells us that we paskin like Rabbi Yeshua, we don't paskin like Rabbi Eliezer. So let's discuss. So which Rabbi Yeshua is Rish Lakish claiming that Rabbi Meir is bringing his raya from? Ilema ha Rabbi Yeshua. Titnan we learned. Chavish shel truma shenoded la safek tuma. You have a barrel of truma that you had a safek tuma on it. For instance, there were 2 barrels in a room, and the person that was tummy came and touched one of the 2 barrels. We don't know which one he touched. So now you have 2 chavis of truma that are safek tummy, and this is how Tosfos learns. Rabbi Eliezer says, "Im hoysem unachas b'makam atarfa." Even if these barrels are in a place where they're in danger of becoming tamei, they're already suffix tamei anyway. Nevertheless, you have to salvage them. Yani chenu b'makam hamutzna. You still have to protect them. So even though they're suffix tamei, you have to continue to protect them from becoming tamei. If they were uncovered, you should cover them. Rabbi Yeshua Aimer, once it's already suffix tamei anyway, even if it's in a place now where it is protected from further becoming tamei, yanichena b'makam hatarfa, you're allowed to actually move these barrels into a place where they're subject to become tamei, where they're in danger of becoming tamei, because you don't need to protect it anymore. So what is the reasoning behind this machlokes? It says, the Torah tells the Kohanim, I've given you the mishmeres of my trumos. True moisai is spelled Tov Reish Vav Mem. I'll point to it in Rashi. Tov Reish Vav Mem Saf Yud. True moisai. Because there's a cholim, there's a dot over the mem. Really, there should be a vav there. True moisai. So really, the kri and the ksiv is different. The kri, the way we read it, is true moisai, which means my multiple true mois. But the ksiv is without that vav, which would really be pronounced true mosi, my singular truma. What is the impact of whether or not this is a singular truma or two trumas? If it's two trumas, then the Torah is teaching us, Kohanim, I'm telling you to take care to watch both of my trumas. Sai my trumas that are vadai tahar, and sai my trumas that are a suffix. I even want you to be careful to protect truma that's a suffix tuma. Even that I want you to protect from further tuma. That's if you read the kri trumoisai. But if you read the ksiv trumosai, then there's only one truma that Hashem is commanding the kohanim to protect from tuma, and that would logically be truma that's tar. But truma that's not for sure tar, it's a suffix that you do not have to worry about protecting. And that's how Rashi explains the machlokes between Rabbi Eliezer and the Rabbanan that we have over here. So let's look at it again. Rabbi Eliezer, you must actively protect it, because it says as mishmeres trumoisai. You must protect both my trumois, even trumois that are a suffix tuma. You have no obligation whatsoever to protect this truma anymore. You only have to protect truma that's tahar. Once it's in a suffix, you don't have to protect it anymore. You could even place it. You can't be metamet b'yadayim, but you could place it in an area where it might become tamei. So how does that translate? How does that translate to our case of chametz? So Rashi, v'ha nami, in our case as well, afilu tahira bas bir here. So let's go back a little bit. Shemin Rabbi Yehuda, Rabbi Yeshua, we heard Rabbi Yeshua say, the kivan de ene ru'uya elul adlaka. This truma, that suffix tamei, suffix tahar. So the kohen may no longer eat it. So what can a kohen do with oil that's tamei if it's truma? All he can do, he can use it to light his lamp. And we learned that since it's only ru'uya lagloka, yochel ligim latoma. Rabbi Yeshua says you're allowed to put it into a place where it's unprotected, where it might become tamei. Since anyway, all we're going to do with it is burn it up. So the hanami by chametz, afilu tahira, even truma tahira, bas birhi, it's going to be burnt shortly because we're coming into Pesach, and therefore umitame noisa. So just like in the case of the barrel, once it's set to be burnt, we no longer have to protect it from tumah. So too truma that's chametz, since it's going to have to be burnt anyway, therefore we do not have to protect it from tumah. Now you just have to make a little note that in the case of Rabbi Yeshua, the reason why you no longer have to protect it, and it's also l'sreifa, is because it became tamei, or it became a suffix tamei. But we're trying to tell that too to chametz, where it's for sure not tamei, but it's still going to be burnt because of a chametz, because of a separate issue. But Rabbi Shimon ben Lakish is equating the two, and he says, since anyway this is going to be burnt, there's no need any longer to protect it from becoming tamei. Right, so there's a little bit of a difference, because over there, the reason why Rabbi Yeshua allows you to allow that oil to become tamei is because it's mishmeres trumasi. It's no longer covered by the chiyuv to burn, by the chiyuv to keep tahar. So therefore, he allows you to put it in danger of becoming tamei. It's a stretch from Rabbi Shimon ben Lakish's perspective to say that even though it's going to be burnt, not machmas tuma, machmas chametz, that's also a reason why we can allow them to become tamei. I just wanted to point it out because there is a difference. Okay, so let's see what the Gemara says. That would not be a good raya because hasam grama ba'alma. From there, Rabbi Yeshua that allows you to place this barrel into a place where it might become tamei, you're not being metamet, you're just ignoring it and letting it become tamei. That maybe you're allowed to do. But hacha b'yadayim, here when you're burning the truma tahira together with the truma tameya, you are physically being metama truma tahira. How could you make such a stretch to say that that would be mutter as well? Elah Rabbi Yeshua. So we're going to have to find a different shita that Rabbi Yeshua said that indicates that you're allowed to be metame b'yadayim. And here's an interesting case. Chavishel truma shenishbara b'gas yoina. The way their wine presses would work is there would be a receptacle above where they would put the grapes and they would crush the grapes. And as the juice flowed out of the grapes, it flowed down out of, there was like a drain in that upper tray, and it drained into a barrel below. And the wine would drain into the barrel, and the barrel was the receptacle for the wine that was pressed out of the grapes above. So what happens if you have a barrel, in other words, the lower receptacle was full of chulin. It was full of chulin. And you have a barrel that's full of truma, wine. Now, the chulin that you have on the bottom is tamei, but there's no problem with chulin tamei. We're allowed to, we're a Yisrael, even a kohen is allowed to eat chulin tamei, as long as he's not trying to be kamtar. Chulin that's tamei is a perfectly good beverage. You're allowed to use it. You're allowed to drink it. Truma that's tamei, you can't do anything with. If it's oil, you can burn it, but if it's wine, it's pretty useless. So imagine you have the lower receptacle was full of wine, and that wine was tamei, but it was chulin. At least it's usable. And then you had a barrel of wine of truma that was sitting in the upper receptacle, and it broke. It's leaking. So that wine is going to drain from the upper receptacle into the lower receptacle. What's it going to do? Now, instead of this being chulin that's tamei, which I could use, it's going to become a mixture of chulin and truma that's tamei, which is now useless. So I'm going to lose all of my chulin wine. That's a disaster. So is there any way to mitigate this problem? Chavish al truma shenishbar begas yoina. The tachtoina and the lower barrel.
Is this a halacha question? Does chulin tamei? I mean,
well, we want to know. We're looking for a practical solution. We have a crisis here. I have 60 gallons of wonderful chulin wine that's about to become garbage.
Right.
Because the moment the truma goes into it, it becomes garbage. You muted yourself. I'm sorry?
Right. Yeah. No. I'm asking you because before the truma tamei, there's a halacha issue also. Here, it's just more, I guess, the baltashkas issue.
What do you mean halacha issue about being metamet?
Saying truma tamei, you're not allowed to make truma wine.
But I did it. The barrel broke by itself.
Right.
I didn't want that to happen.
So, but I'm saying just the issue here is more of a practical saving the chulin.
I want to save my chulin. I want to save my truma. If I can prevent the truma from going down, my truma will remain tar, and my chulin will remain usable. The moment they mix, I've lost everything.
Right.
So I'm panicking right now because I'm about to lose 2 barrels of wine. So chavish al truma shenish b'ra b'gas yoina v'tachtoina chulin tamein. So Moider Rebbe Lezer and Rebbe Yeshua, both Rebbe Lezer and Rebbe Yeshua agree. Now, let's say I could run and grab a keli that's tahar. I have enough time to run and grab a keli that's tahar. Should I go and grab a keli that's tahar and therefore rescue some of the wine? I should do that. If I could run quickly and grab a keli to salvage some of the wine, I should do that. But if I can't, what should I do? Now remember, if I salvage a revius of wine, that's truma, that's what I got, a revius of wine of truma. I still messed up all of my chulin down below because the rest of the truma fell into that barrel. But v'imlav, what if there is no way I could save any truma at all? And saving any truma means a shir of a revius. I'm not able to salvage a revius of the truma, so I'm going to lose the truma anyway. Can I at least do something to salvage the chulin? What could I do? Nothing you could do about it. You have to just let the truma wine drain down into your chulin barrel, and you've lost everything. But Rabbi Yeshua says, if anyway you can't salvage any of the wine because you don't have a keli available that's at least a revius, that's tahar, to at least capture some of the wine, what you could do is af yitamena b'yad. What you could do is you have a lot of vats lying around the wine press, but they're all tummy. But since I'm going to lose all my chulin, I can capture all of the wine of truma that's draining. I can capture it into a tummy bucket, which means I'm going to be biyadayim, being mitama the wine. And this way, I've salvaged at least the tummy wine that's chulin below. So everybody agrees if there's an opportunity to salvage some of the truma and keep it tahar, that you have to do. Too bad for you if your chulin gets ruined. But the question is, if anyway the truma is going to get ruined anyway, can I capture the truma in a tummy bucket? So I'm actively being mitama the truma, but at least I'm salvaging all of the chulin in the barrel below. So Rabbi Yeshua holds af yitamena b'yad. So from here you have a raya that since anyway it's going to be ruined, you're allowed to be metamet b'yadayim. That's a very good raya to our case by chametz. Since anyway you're going to have to burn everything anyway, it's becoming tamei. I'm allowed to be metamet b'yad. I'm allowed to put the truma tahira together with the truma tameya because anyway it's getting ruined. So that's a geshmak raya. In fact, the Gemara, ihachi, hai midivrei midvar v'boile. What were the words of Reb Meir? Reb Meir said, midivrei lamanu, from the words of our chachamim. I've been able to learn that you're allowed to burn truma that's tar together with truma that's tamei. There's no two people, but tamei divrei. It shouldn't be plural. It's only Rabbi Yeshua who allows this. It's only Rabbi Yeshua who allows you to be metama the wine by capturing it in a vat that's tamei before it drains down into your chulin. So Reb Meir should have said midvar mibayale. When he was announcing his halacha, he shouldn't have said everybody agrees. He should have said, I found one shita that allows me to do that. Zok to Gemara, Hachika Amar. This is what he meant. Mimachlakusin Shalvar Belezer Rabbi Yeshua, from discussing and analyzing the machloikis between Rabbi Lezer and Rabbi Yeshua, Labmadnu, I learned, in other words, by analyzing the machloikis of Rabbi Lezer and Rabbi Yeshua, I was able to understand and get clear what Rabbi Yeshua meant, but ultimately, it's really only one Rabbi Yeshua that Reb Meir is bringing his raya from. Just like Rabbi Yeshua allows you to capture the truma wine in a tamei vat, even though you're actively being mitama the wine, and he allows it because if you didn't do that, it would become tamei anyway. So too, Reb Meir holds that you're allowed to burn chametz that's tamei together with chametz that's tar, even though you're actively being mitama the truma, because anyway it's going to be burnt anyway.
Yosy?
Dekanami.
Yosy?
Yes.
So just going back to how you prefaced before starting this Gemara.
Could you hold the mic again?
Sorry, I don't know what's wrong with this. Anyways, just going back to how you prefaced before starting this Gemara. This raya only holds true if it's after Achilas Zman Achilas Chametz, no? Because if it's before Zman Achilas Chametz, he still can eat it.
So let's think about this a little bit. Rabbi Yeshua holds that anytime the wine or anytime the truma is headed for ruin, you're allowed to be metamet. So
right.
why are
after
you
Achilas, because it's headed for
ruin? Here right now you could drink the wine. You could put your mouth right up to the wine and drink it if you want to. It's not tummy right now. It's going to become tummy after it drains down into the vat of wine below that's tummy.
Not his,
right.
I guess maybe that's what he's saying. It's not his.
The reason why I'm coming up forcefully against your comment is the Gemara is going to actually say soon that if you learn it from Reb Chanina, Skana Kaihanim, then you have these different shades of gray, so to speak. You have different shades of tumah and when it would be allowed. But they all say unequivocally that if the makar of this halacha is Rabbi Yeshua, there's really no place to make that distinction.
Okay.
Because Zakta Gemara Vater, it'll become clearer later when we get to it. Zakta Dekanami. We could prove it as well. We could prove it as well that it, in fact, it is from Rabbi Yeshua and Rabbi Lezer that Rabbi Meir is bringing his raya from. Tikatani, Moida, Rabbi Lezer, Rabbi Yeshua, Shema Mina. So Rashi says, Aval Bishanechlaku, even though Rabbi Lezer and Yeshua are arguing, Be'en Yochel, when you can't save it, Be'sefer Moidin, in the Sefer their Moida, V'shoven Hein Bekach, they both agree, Shem Yochel, Lahatzel, Mimena Revius B'tahira, if you are able to find a keli that's tahar, that can hold at least a revius, you for sure have to do it. Im yochel lechazer acher kelim tahirim ulekabel kodim sheteiret kula l'soichat tmein. If you can at least salvage some of the wine that's draining and getting ruined, you're supposed to yachzer yichazer achareim. You have to. Ba'al yikabelenu bekelim tmeim kidei lahatzol sachulin. You should not use kelim tmeim to capture all the wine, just to salvage the barrel below that's chulin, shlois arvim in the ben v'esru. If you spend time looking for a keli that's a revius to salvage some of the truma wine, you're going to lose all of your chulin wine, because some of the wine that's truma is going to drain into the chulin while you're running to get this keli that's a revius. And you're going to lose all of your chulin. You're still not allowed to be metama the truma for a solas chulin. You only could do it if not. Oh, I'm sorry. I wanted a dekanami. Dekanami. The Reb Meir mid Rabbi Yeshua Yalef. The raya is that Reb Meir is learning it from Rabbi Yeshua, not from Chanina. Mid the makahader le Rabbi Yosy. How did Rabbi Yosy respond in our Mishnah to argue on Reb Meir? He said, "Eina hi min amida." The moeder Rabbi Lezer Rabbi Yeshua bazu. So Shema Mina from Rabbi Yosy's response to Reb Meir, quoting Rabbi Lezer and Rabbi Yeshua. Shema Minami now have a yalef. It must be that Rabbi Meir was referring to Rabbi Lezer and Rabbi Yeshua, and therefore Rabbi Yosy refutes Rabbi Meir working with Rabbi Lezer and Rabbi Yeshua. They can now be the Katani Mad Rabbi Lezer Rabbi Yeshua Shema Mina. V'chein Amar Rab Nachman Amar Rabbi Baravua. Rab Nachman, in the name of Rabbi Baravua, wanted to learn like Rish Lakish as well, that Masnisin of Chanina, Rabbi Chanina's Kanakayanim is Ba'ava Tuma Dairaisa and Vlada Tuma Midairaisa. Right? Only Rish Lakish was able to do that because Rish Lakish found a different makar to the halacha that you could burn truma tahira or truma tameya. He found the machlokes of Rabbi Lezer and Rabbi Yeshua by the barrel that cracked. But remember, on Amud Beis, before we had Rabbi Shimon ben Lakish, we were forced to say that the Vlada Tumah was only the Rabbanan. So Rabbi Nachman agrees to Rish Lakish that everything is Daraisa in our Mishnah. Umaymi Divrayim, and exactly who are the Divrayim that Rabbi Meir is learning the halacha that you're allowed to burn truma tahira together with truma tameya? It's midivrei Rabbi Lezer and Rabbi Yeshua. So that's consistent with what we just learned in the name of Rish Lakish. So Eisvei Rava l'Rab Nachman. Rava had a kasha to Rab Nachman. There's a brisa that elaborates on the conversation that Rabbi Yosy had with Rabbi Meir. Rabbi Yosy didn't like Rabbi Meir's halacha that you're allowed to burn truma tahira with truma tameya, and Rabbi Yosy was arguing with Rabbi Meir. And the brisa tells us over this following conversation. Eina nidain daima l'raya. You can't bring me a raya. The shaila that you have, truma tahira with truma tameya, is not comparable to the case from which you brought the raya. Why is that? Shekesheidu Rabbi Seinu, when the Rabbi Seinu were made, meaning Rabbi Chanina's Kanakayanim, al maha'idu. On what were they saying testimony? So right off the bat, before we even move from here, you clearly see from Rabbi Yosy that at least the way he understood Rabbi Meir was bringing a raya from our own Mishnah, not from the case of Rabbi Lezer and Rabbi Yeshua. So how could you claim to say that the Midivrayim, the source of Rabbi Meir's halacha, that you're allowed to burn truma tahira with truma tameya, is a totally different shaila of the wine barrel breaking? You see from Rabbi Yehuda's response to Rabbi Meir that the raya was, at least the way he understood it, the raya was from our case of mixing the meat together. Because he said, your raya is not similar to the case that we're trying to analyze. When the Rabbi Seinu said the Edus about the Shlishi meat burning with the Rishon meat, al maha'idu, what was their testimony? Im halabasar shenitma bivlada tuma They allowed you to burn a shlishi latoma with a piece of meat that you're going to burn that has a rishon latoma, and it's going to make it into a sheni. Zeh tamei v'zeh tamei. In that case, both of those meats are tamei. Or or if you want to talk about the second case of our Mishnah, where you had shemen, that's a shlishi latoma, that you're going to put that oil into a ner that's an avatuma, and you're going to make it into a rishon. Again, zeh pasol v'zeh tamei. At least the oil started off already being pasol, so it's already defected. Af anu moedim b'truma shenitmas b'vladatuma. I would agree to you, Reb Meir, that if you had a similar case of truma, so you had truma that was a rishon and you had truma that was a shlishi, that I agree to you that you could burn them both together, because that is similar to the earlier cases of the Mishnah. But you want to take it a step further. Never mind tahoira in the tameya. That's ugeret. But even if you have a suffik tummy, even if you have truma that's a suffik tummy, how should you be allowed to burn that together with truma that really is tummy? Shema Yove Elio v'yitarena. Maybe Elio will come and say that this truma was really tahar, and you in effect have made truma that's tahar, you made it tummy. So therefore, Rabbi Yosy says it's not a good raya. But right off the bat, you see that the discussion here is if our case of burning truma tahar with truma tameya is comparable to the earlier cases of a p'chinas kanakayanim. We're not discussing at all some remote case of Rabbi Yeshua. So this would in fact be proof that the raya that Rabbi Meir was bringing was from the p'chinas kanakayanim and not from the case of the wine. Now this brisa that includes Rabbi Yosy's discussion with Rabbi Meir happens to go off on a tangent and discuss another issue that we'll come back later to analyze, but the Gemara is quoting it at this point. Hapigol v'anoiser v'tamei. Pigol, we know, is a carbon that when you shechted it or when you did one of the avodas, you had in mind to eat it either chutz l'zmanai or chutz l'mkaimai. It makes the meat possible. V'anoiser. Noiser is meat that was left past the time that you're allowed to eat it. Again, it's usher to eat. And v'atamei, and something that's actually tomei. Now Rashi tells us that pigol and noiser have on it a tuma derabanan. Derabanan made a tuma on it. So a pigol v'anoiser v'atamei. And Rashi says the reason why the Rabbanan said pigol is tamei is because if there's some nasty kohanim that want to mess up someone's carbon, they have no skin in the game. They have absolutely nothing to lose by destroying someone else's carbon. Let's say they hate the guy who brings the carbon, and the carbon costs $500 for an animal. If he has in mind pigol, it messes the carbon up, and it causes a $500 loss. I'm not sure if he can sue in court or not, but the coin with his machshava can easily cause someone a loss. So it gets messy. However, because of that, the Rabbanan wanted the kohen to have skin in the game. What was their skin in the game? If they said that pigol will make you tummy, which means if you're mefagel an animal during your avodah, then you'll become tummy. Now you won't be able to eat any kachim that day. So once you have skin in the game, you might be more careful not to mess up somebody else's carbon. Noiser is we want to be mezaris you to finish eating your meat on time. And this is not only for a kohen, even a Yisrael eating a shlomim. So the incentive is that if it becomes noiser, the noiser will be tummy. So just an extra boost to try to keep people in line and check. That tummy. So are you allowed to burn these together? So tummy is tummy b'deraisa, pigol and noiser are tummy b'deron. Beishami oimrim ein nisrafin kachas. You're not allowed to burn them together because you're making pigol and noiser tummy. We still oimrim nisrafin kachas. You're allowed to burn them together. Frank the Gemara, going back to the original discussion, where clearly in the discussion that Rabbi Yosy is having with Rabbi Meir, the raya is from our Mishnah. He's talking about Rabbi Meir, Rabbi Yeshua Amar. If Rabbi Meir's raya that you're allowed to burn truma tahor with truma tameya is from the case of the barrel of wine, amay mahadir le Rabbi Yosy midrab chinis kana kehanim. Rabbi Yosy is talking about something completely different from which Rabbi Meir was bringing his raya from. So Amal Rabbi Nachman, this was indeed a misunderstanding. Rabbi Yosy lavadaite. Rabbi Yosy misunderstood what Reb Meir meant when he said midivrei lamadu. To who Sovar, he thought that what Reb Meir meant was Reb Meir midirab Chaninas kana kehanim kamerlei. And that's why he said that your nidain is not daimah to the raya, because there it's tamei and here it's tamei and tar. Well, Amalei, so Reb Meir answered back to Rabbi Yosy, that's not where my raya is from. You're right, that's raya is not a good raya. But I brought my raya elsewhere. Ano midirab Yeshua kamina. And then Rabbi Yosy came back and said, even from Rabbi Yeshua, you can't bring me a raya. And that's how our Mishnah ends off. Rabbi Yeshua nami it wouldn't work. The moida Rabbi Lezer Rabbi Yeshua shesoyer of zu b'fnei atzma. Our Mishnah says that in the case where you have vadei tome and vadei tar, everyone would be moida that you have to burn them separately. So that explains the conversation of what went on between Rabbi Yosy and Reb Meir, even though Reb Meir's raya was never from our Mishnah. Reb Meir's raya was from the fact that you're allowed to capture wine, according to Rabbi Yeshua, in a tamei vat. You're allowed to capture truma tahira in a tamei vat for the purposes of salvaging the wine in your barrel that you have that's chul and that's tamei, so it shouldn't get messed up. So v'amai einahi min amida. We don't. Why isn't that a good raya? It seems like the raya is very good. You're allowed to physically and actively be a daim capture truma that's tar in a tamei keli. So it's a pretty good raya. It's actually very parallel. Here I'm burning truma tahira with truma tameya, and there I'm making truma tahira tamei by capturing it in a tamei vat. Where there's a lot of loss involved, if I don't capture the wine in the vat that's tamei, what's going to happen to that tamei wine? That truma wine, that truma wine. It's going to drain down into my barrel of chulun that's tamei. And what's going to be the net effect? That I can't use any of the wine anymore. So I lost everything. When there's a lot of loss of money involved, sure, then you might be able to be matama the wine via dayim. But over here, you're burning the chametz. There's no loss in burning them separately. So therefore, you have to segregate the truma that's tamei and the truma that's tar, and you have to burn them separately. Because there's no great loss of money. We only allow you to be matama, teruma, tahira, if there's a loss of money involved. If you have to make two separate fires, one for your truma tahira and one for your truma tameya, it's going to cost you more in firewood. Has anybody went to 7-Eleven recently to buy a bag of firewood and see what it costs? Amr le'ahu saba. There's a very big difference between destroying a big barrel of wine that could be worth hundreds of, maybe thousands of dollars if it's a fine wine, and buying for $25 wood in 7-Eleven. Sure, it bothers you, but that doesn't compare. That doesn't compare to the big loss, of a whole barrel of wine. Somebody once told me that he went with a very wealthy man to buy a beautiful yacht in a yacht store, and this wealthy man took his family with him. When they were going to look at boats, they were spending like $50,000 on a beautiful boat. And in the marina where they were looking at the boat, they had a soda machine. And one of the kids said, "Tati, can I have a soda?" So the father says, "Are you crazy? It's $1. It's way too expensive." So for firewood, it's too expensive, but for wine, it's not. So Zog the Hele Gemara weiter. Omer Abasi, Omer B'Yochanan. Machloikis b'sheish. This machloikis, where Reb Meir allows you to burn truma tahira with truma tameya, this machloikis, where Reb Meir allows you to be metama truma tahira, is in the 6th hour. In the 6th hour, midirabanon, it's already asher bana, but not midaraisa. Aval b'sheva, but in the 7th hour, meaning once the chametz is already asher, even midaraisa, divrei akol sarfin, even Rabbi Yosy would agree that you're allowed to burn the truma tahira, the truma tameya, because at this point the truma tahira is asher b'hana midaraisa anyway. It happens to be tar, but once it's asher b'hana midaraisa, even Rabbi Yosy would agree that you could burn it together with the truma tameya. Amalei Reb Zera Larbasi. Name Kosover Reb Yochanan Masnisen Ba'ava Tuma Dairaisa and Velara Tuma Midrabanan. Umay Midavreim Midivrei Reb Chanina Skana Kayhanim. So this is going back to what Dovi brought up. Our case here is burning Truma Tahir with Truma Tamea. Now, like we said, there's three levels. There's the Truma Tahir once it's Osir Midairaisa, and there Rabbi Yochanan already declared, Rabbi Yosy holds once it's Osir Midairaisa, even though it's not Tamei, you're for sure allowed to burn it together with Truma Tamea. But there's two other levels. There's the where it's only Osir Midarbanan, and when it's not Osir at all. So let's think about it. If the whole Raya is from Rabbi Chanina Skana Kayhanim, where we said that we're talking about Truma, that's Tamei Midrabanan, it's just not Tamei Midaraisa, yet we're still allowed to burn it together with Truma Tamea, with Kachim that's Tamei. So that would be more parallel to a case where the Truma Tahira is already Asur Midrabanan. So during the 6th hour, where the Truma Tahira is Asur Midrabanan, just not Asur Midaraisa, that would be similar to the Reb Chanina Skana Kayhanim, where you're burning the kachim that's Tamei Midrabanan together with the kachim that's Tamei Midaraisa. But how about earlier in the morning, in the 5th hour, where the Truma is not even yet Asr, even Midrabanan? Maybe over there, even Reb Meir would agree that you're not allowed to burn the Truma together, the Truma Tahira together with the Truma Tamea. However, if the makar of this halacha is from Rabbi Yeshua, according to Rabbi Yeshua, even if the wine is completely tar, not even midrabanan, it's completely tar, you're still allowed to be metamet. So according to Rabbi Yeshua, even before the chametz is osir at all, even when it's 100% mutter, you'd also be allowed to burn it together with the truma tameo.
Yeah, but
so what our Gemara is doing is, our Gemara is saying, if you say the makar of Rabbi Meir is from Rabbi Yeshua, that you're allowed to be mitama perfectly good wine to salvage the wine in the barrel, well then, by the same token, you'd be allowed to burn truma that's tar with truma that's tamei, even before there's mana yisr, even when it's 100% mutter.
Yosy.
But if your raya is only from the Mishnah, where anyway it was already tamei midrabanan, then the Gemara holds that you'd only be allowed to burn the truma tahir with the tameya in the 6th hour, where it's already usher midrabanan. And that is what the Gemara shaila is. Kasavar. We're gonna have to. It's 7:51 already, so we have to stop. This is a discussion in and of itself. I see Duvi has a whole bunch of questions.
No, just
so
one.
I think let's pick this up tomorrow morning, where we can digest it properly and break it down properly.
Okay.
Because there's a lot to discuss here. We just don't have the time. So Duvi, you can ask. You can ask.
Let me ask. So the case is still different because with the wine, it's going to become tame anyway, and if it's before Zman Achila, you still have the chance to eat it. So I don't understand the comparison.
Well, you could drink the wine.
What? No, but you said
you could drink the wine as it's coming out of the barrel.
But we said the reason why you can be matame, you can put a.
In either case, it's going to be ruined. Yeah, right this second I could do it, but I can't salvage.
You can drink the wine before it comes in the pail.
The wine now, I could drink it right now as it pleads out of the barrel. I could drink it, yet I'm allowed to be metamet. I'm allowed to take a vat that's tummy, capture all the wine in a vat that's tummy, and I'm being metama all of this Torah wine. And right now, it's not usher, not tummy with the rice, it's not tummy with the rabbanon, it's 100% mutter now. Sure, it's headed to disaster, but right now it's 100% Torah, similar to the chametz. Right now, I can eat the chametz, but it's headed to disaster. In a matter of minutes, it's going to become Asur Bano.
Okay.
Okay, we'll pick it up tomorrow. Once we review it again, it'll come out a little bit clearer. Okay, shkoyach.
Shkoyach.
It's a